Now to a founding father completely erased from our history books. There probably wouldn't even be a revolution if it wasn't for this one man. His name, George Whitefield.
One of the things you have to start with Whitefield is that he was the best known person in colonial America, period.
How is that possible? That's like all of a sudden, I was going to say, actually, I could see this happening. That's like in 200 years, people saying, Michael Jackson, who? What? I mean, he was that big of a rock star, right?
Yes, he was. I mean, it's the equivalent of someone saying that, you know, they've never heard of Billy Graham or something like that, for us not to know about Whitefield. He was the primary instigator of the Great Awakening of the 18th century. He spoke to and was seen by far the most people in colonial America.
I just want to set the scene a little bit. When he's young, he's over in England, and he's famous over in England first. He converts, he becomes a Methodist, but then he has kind of a really strange relationship, or strained relationship with most of the preachers. That comes from the preachers really being, you know, Church of England. It was like, you know, it was like having Barack Obama give your sermon all the time, I'd imagine, where it's the government, you know, it's the government spin through the eyes of God. And they didn't really care about the poor because the poor didn't vote, right? Mm-hmm. And he was the first guy that says, wait a minute, guys, there are people out there cold and hungry. And that caused some real strain in England. Tell me about when he comes over here to America, what is his message that begins to light the fire for the American Revolution?
As the 1760s went on, he did become very overtly involved with the crisis between Britain and the colonies. In fact, he may have been one of the earliest people from Britain to start warning the colonists that there was trouble coming. There's reports that in 1764 he came to America and said, "There's trouble coming from Britain, and your golden days are at an end," is the quote of what he said, and began warning people ahead of time that this was coming.
He called it, "There is a deep laid plot against your civil and religious liberties."
And then when he
hang on just a second.
yeah.
There is a, what was it again?
A deep laid plot.
There's a deep laid plot
against both your civil and religious liberties. Your golden days are at an end.
What he said.
My heart bleeds for you, America.
That's right. And so when he goes back to England, he's there with Franklin, again, his good friend Franklin. When Franklin testifies before Parliament on the colony's behalf because of their protests against the Stamp Act, and Whitefield, I think, behind the scenes, is advocating against the Stamp Act. And by the time you get to Whitefield's passing in 1770, and on his last trip to America, he dies in Massachusetts, the funeral sermons by the colonial pastors are saying he is largely to thank for the repeal of the Stamp Act. And they say he was a true patriot, not just in words, but also in actions.
The Founders Friday series may have come to an end, but now it's your turn to help keep history alive. We'll tell you how next.
Now that Founders Friday is over, there's still a lot of ways to get good history. When you pick up a biography about George Washington or George Whitefield or Benjamin Rush or John Jay or any founding father, always go to the back and see what the bibliography looks like. And if it cites a bunch of modern books, don't buy it. Get a book that cites the old books, the books that have their writings in it. Our website at wallbuilders.com, we actually have a list of recommended reading items on Founding Fathers, so people can go buy them at the store or they can go online and read these books. One of the really fun things to do to help history come alive is not only read biographies, but go see it as it's lived out. So you go to Williamsburg, Virginia, and there at Williamsburg you get to see what colonial life was like, what it was for Patrick Henry and Jefferson and Washington. Or you jump over to, for example, Jamestown, and in Jamestown you see what the early landing was like in the early 1600s. Or you go up to Plymouth Plantation, see what it would have been like to live as a pilgrim in Massachusetts. So there's no reason for Founders Fridays to stop in a personal manner. We just keep feeding ourselves our history and our information that by and large we didn't get while we were in school.
Like you just heard my good friend David Barton say, seek out the original documents of our founders. Read their own words. Read them to your children. Walk in their footsteps. Thank you to David Barton of Wall Builders, and thank you, our viewers, for embracing Founders Fridays. We ask that you would respect Memorial Day weekend. Have a good one. Enjoy it with your family. But remember what it's all about. The men and women in our armed forces. Godspeed. From New York, good night, America.